Hello everyone, Clack of the Geek here, and welcome back to a brand new video. Hope you're all keeping well. Now, because it's Comic Relief today as I'm recording this, which is the British charity event that happens every 2 years on the BBC, I thought I would take a look way back to the late 90s at Doctor Who's Comic Relief special, which is not only the best bit of Doctor Who to come out in the 1990s, but also, unironically, the best Stephen Moffat Dalek story, The Curse of Fatal Death. So by the late 1990s, Doctor Who, to put it bluntly, was on its arse. You know, it had been cancelled 10 years prior, back in '89 by the BBC. And what I think really set in stone this negative perception towards Doctor Who as a bit of a laughingstock was the Paul McGann movie. Whether you like it or not, at the time, it was a failure. It didn't bring the show back, and it was just a failed attempt. And it was sort of concrete proof at the time that, yeah, Doctor Who, this nearly 40-year-old show, is a relic of a bygone era, you know, campy, stupid monsters running up and down corridors and hokey acting and all this stuff. It was a laughingstock, so it was ideal for parody, and in 1999, Comic Relief, as part of their telethon, made this little two-part, 20-minute-long short episode that kind of parodied a traditional classic Who story, written by Stephen Moffat, the future showrunner of Doctor Who. This little special episode also featured predominantly Rowan Atkinson, yep, Mr. Bean himself, as the main incarnation of the Doctor, and through a gag involving regeneration, you get Richard E. Grant, Jim Broadbent, Hugh Grant, and Joanna Lumley playing other incarnations of the Doctor. You also have Julia Swanson playing his companion Emma, and Jonathan Pryce playing the Master. And it also features the last time that Roy Skelton, who'd been voicing the Daleks since the 1960s, would ever in any way voice the Daleks. Now, of all of the little sort of Doctor Who oddities and one-off, you know, things that exist, you know, these like unofficial, non-canon things, I'm thinking, you know, Dimension and Time, Scream of the Shalka, Canon and Company, you know, these kind of things. This is one of my favourites. It's just an absolute delight to watch, and it's probably the best thing to come out of the wilderness years, in all honesty. I mean, I'm a simple guy. I love classic Who, I love comedy, I love spoofs most of the time, and this is just, this episode is such a labour of love, because obviously Stephen Moffat writing this, you know, he was a long-time fan growing up, and he never thought that he would obviously get the chance to write for Doctor Who, because it had been cancelled, so he never would have predicted that it would come back, so this was like his only chance to write for it, and, you know, it's an absolute labour of love, despite being a spoof. You know, you have certain things that take the mick out of, like running up and down the same corridor, the hokey sets and the lighting, the kind of cheapness of it all. The I'll explain later gag is a bit of a kind of trope of classic Who, but it's really well done, and it's just very, yeah, it's that labour of love and passion that you can feel from it. Now, as a bit of comedy, it works wonders. Now, Stephen Moffat actually wrote some sitcoms before he worked on Doctor Who properly, so you can feel that comedic style and wit in this episode. Obviously, as I say, they kind of mock a lot of the classic Who tropes, but also you have just, like, you know, witty dialogue and performances. You have some really good, like, physical comedy, like with the regenerations gag, you know, the Doctor regenerates over really stupid things every, like, couple of minutes. I forgot to unplug it. It's really quite funny, like, and it just, you know, it uses a bit of Doctor Who lore and just has fun with it, and that's a great use of the kind of parody genre. One thing I think really helps with this is the performances, especially from Rowan Atkinson. I think with Rowan Atkinson, this is actually the hardest I've ever seen him act. Like, usually I just see him doing his Mr. Bean shtick and his comedy stuff, but here, he feels like he's taking it seriously. I almost get like Pertwee vibes from him, but the things that are coming out of his mouth are funny, you know, they kind of, there's that wit and that irony about it, but it's because the actors treat it kind of semi-seriously, and the characters don't find it funny, usually. And that's what works about it, particularly with Rowan Atkinson. I think he's the main example of that. Now, it's important to remember that this is still a Moffat script, and Moffat can be a bit naughty with the humour, and I think sometimes he does forget that he's not actually writing for a 70s Bond film, he's writing for Doctor Who, and there are some, like, naughty jokes, particularly at the end with the, you know, the Doctor, the Joanna Lumley Doctor and the Master. And, you know, it's a bit, you know, you're thinking, mate, you're pushing it, you're really pushing it here. And, you know, I get why some people would find it a bit too much and a bit too OTT, and you'd say it's not funny, didn't laugh, and whatnot. But maybe it's just because my sense of humour is so ungodly and mature at times, I find it funny. I just find it funny. I can just kind of go along with it, really. There's also a certain novelty by seeing a lot of these famous British faces in it. Obviously, you've got Rowan Atkinson, you've got Jim Broadbent, you've got Hugh Grant, you've got Richard E. Grant, which was not the first... This isn't the last time he played the Doctor, he played it in Scream of the Shalka. You've got John Lumley as, like, the first female Doctor, technically. Jonathan Pryce, I think, is actually really good as the Master. I mean, he was a great Bond villain around this time, so, you know... maybe he could play the Master in the future. I also think it's quite interesting looking at this as a sort of artifact of the time, obviously the Wilderness Years, you know, the time between the classic and the new series, and obviously it is parodying classic Who. It's kind of the framework of a classic Who serial, but there's a lot of like more modern ideas and more modern ideas that Moffat himself would end up including in his own era, you know, when he officially became showrunner. You know, there's a whole cruel and cowardly thing that came up quite a lot in his era. You know, certain quotes and motifs you can find in certain Moffat stories. There's the whole thing of the Doctor and his companion in a relationship, you know, they're getting married, that's pretty funny. The Master turns good, you know, like Missy in the Capaldi era. And it's really interesting, you know, to kind of spot these traits that Moffat would end up including in his own era. And what you thought was, you know, because this is obviously his only chance, the things he incorporated, obviously, he'd probably want to incorporate. And then, you know, what he'd end up keeping in his own era. I think that's just really interesting to kind of look back on in retrospect and pick out. I think that's quite interesting. So overall, The Curse of Fatal Death is just an absolute blast and one of my favourite bits of non-official, non-canon Doctor Who. What would I score it out of 10 though?
I'll explain later.
So that's the end of the video, and you know, hope you enjoyed it. And I want to know what you think of The Curse of Fatal Death. Do you like this little special episode? And also, if you like this review, say in the comments if you want me to review more like kind of obscure, non-canon Doctor Who things. I'm thinking the likes of Scream of the Shalka, the Peter Cushing Dalek movies, even Dimensions in Time, if you really want me to, because that would be funny. It'd be bad, but it would be funny. So if you want that, you just gotta say in the comments and I'll bloody do it for you, because I'm that nice, aren't I? Why do you make me do this?
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.